Hello, good afternoon everyone. So welcome to another episode of Liquid Brain. So today is our part 3 of a 10-part video series on the Googlesheet tutorial. So today specifically we're talking about index match. So if you have not watched the first two videos, so you kind of have to understand a little bit about what is a standard data structure or how to import data. So the standard data structure is very straightforward, just to make sure every single column are of the same data type and are for the same data. So in this case, this is actually called the iris data, a very standard sample data set that we use. So the first column comprises of the sample length, the second is the sample width, the third one petal length, petal width. So everything below the petal width is the petal width. So you don't mix data within the data set and you don't calculate within your data set directly. You calculate somewhere else. Okay, so let's go back to our index match once we get it sorted out. So in this case, similar with the last two lessons, we're using the cars dataset, which actually comprise of different models of car as well as the specification. So in this case, the first one is a miles per gallon, the second cylinder, the third one displacement, HP, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go for the first one. So what is the index function? So index function is actually just export the certain element based on the number they fit in. So let's say we're fitting in a single dimensional list. So we can actually look at this function over here. So index B14 to B20, which is actually you can see is the orange color selection here. And I select number 5, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hornet spot about, which is why you have the output here as the Hornet spot about. So if you want to go for number 4, you actually go for Hornet 4 drive. You go for number 2, it becomes the Mazda RX-4 wagon and so on. So, however, do remember that you should not go larger than the number brings you. So in this case, B14 to B20 only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if I put a number 8 in the back, it should give me an error. Yeah. So you give me a number error, which is that the function index parameter 2 value 8 is out of range. So you cannot do that. But what you can do is actually just keep it within, and you can easily get the element that you want. Okay, so the second one is of course the two-dimensional array. So just now we talked about inputting a one-dimensional list. So what's the difference between a list and array is that a list only have a single dimension. Array has two-dimensional, so x and y position. Okay, so if you are putting in an array, in this case, the example is B13 to C20, which is the orange color selection here. You actually have to put in two numbers. So in this guy, I put in 5 and 2. So 5 is the row number. So the fifth row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Hornet 4 drive. And 2 is the column number. So 1 and 2 is 21.4. So I press 21.4, press enter. The data here will be 21.4. So if I want to have, let's say, number 6, you give you 18.7. If I want to go for number 1 and number 1, you give me an empty one because the first cell here is empty. So let's just, if I want to select, let's say MPG. So it's on the first row, the second column, you give me MPG, and so on and so forth. So you just, I think very similar to all the other matrices. You just key in the number of position based on their row and column. That's how you use index. Okay, so match has a very similar concept where you put in a source array and then you do a match type, and then that will tell you which number is the match. So what we did just now, but in reverse. Okay, so in this case, I'm putting a source as the Mazda RX-4 wagon. But the match here, we have first 3 types, the search key. In this case, this is our source, Mazda RX-4 wagon. The second is the range. So similar to the VLOOKUP just now, the range is the original table. But in this case, remember, it has to be a list, because match do not understand an array. Okay, so use a list. So in this case, it's B14 to B20. So only this 7 element. And the last one is 0. 0 actually means search type. 0 here. So the search method. So default find the largest value less than equal, and 0 find the exact value when the range is unsorted. Okay, so I usually just use 0 directly for exact match, but it depends on what you're doing. You can use 1 or -1. Okay, so what it does is that it will find from the range which one matches our source. So which one is the Mazda RX-4 wagon? 1, 2. So I output the number 2. So let's change this data. Let's say I want to find the valiant. So valiant is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which is why I'll put the number 6. Okay, that's it. So match, fairly straightforward. It tells you which number is it on the match. Okay, now we are doing something called the nesting equation, which is actually here. So nesting equation, which is put two equations into one place and see how they actually work within each other. So what we do is that we are doing something very similar to VLOOKUP, where we look at one column. Sorry, we look at one column, yes, correct. And then we look at that's row 65. So we want to find what is on the right side of it. Okay, so the first example is that we use a source as a Dyson, and we use so that's the source of that you want to search for, and we run a match on it. So in this case, when we run a match, we know that in row 3, and then we can actually use a match to, how do I say, so to fit the index, and instead of using the index number, we use the match to find the index number. I think that makes sense. So we have a source over here, and then we search the source onto the list to see which value it is, and then we can fit that thing back to array so that we can actually find back the number. So in this case, the Datsun 710 is the number, is the third element, 1, 2, 3, is the third element from the array, so that we can actually get a match result of 3. So when we put back the array and we put the 3 over here, so we can see this thing is exactly the same as what we feed in to this one. Okay, so in fact I can just copy this and I can just paste this back in here. Okay, so then we can get back the result. So this is not very useful. This just find back whatever I am looking for. But what this is powerful is that we can actually vary the first index number. So we know that it's position 3. So if you do not want to search for column B, we want to search for column C, we can just change column C, and we know that the miles per gallon for the Datsun 710 is actually 22.8. So Datsun 7.8, 22.8. Okay, so we can actually shift the number of the name of the column to see what we want to go for. Let's say we want to go for QSEC. Okay, so this is I. Okay, so we change whatever we have now, which is C, and change to I. Okay, 18.61. So let's check. Datsun 710 for the QSEC, 18.61. Okay, so very easy. We can just change back to B so that we don't get confusing. So we can get back the result exactly. Okay, so description using so this is what I actually demonstrated just now. Instead of using the same array in the index, you use a different array and use the match to match the original array. So so you might ask, then why don't I just use VLOOKUP? It's easier. So this is where we come to the comparison between VLOOKUP index match. VLOOKUP, you only can put the number here, number 2, which is what we talked about in our last video, and watch that if you haven't already. So the problem with index match is that it has to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, it has to be the column on the right. So if your data is on the left, it's a bit of a confusing situation to use VLOOKUP, which is why for index match, you can actually match 22.8 back into the first column. So in this case, I'm matching the source to column C, so that's column C, and I'm returning the result in column B. So remember, this is the search that you want to perform, and this is the one that you want to return. Okay, so this is what you can do with index match that VLOOKUP cannot do. So just to refresh your memory a bit before I end the video, so today we'll talk about index match. Index can actually take two types of data. So you can take a list where you will just key one number, you return the number that you specified from the list. So in this case, Datsun is the number 7, Duster 360, the 7th element list. Okay, or you can actually fit in a 2-dimensional array. In this case, that you can do. So this is actually B13 to C20. So we are doing row 1 and column 2, which is the MPG. So you can actually change the number to specify different location that you want to return. Match do very similar thing to the VLOOKUP over there, but it only tells you the number of position that find the matches. So in this case, Valiant is the numbers. So Valiant can be found in the number 6 row of the original input list. Okay, so value 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so it returns number 6. So if you use them in conjunction when you nest match index inside the index function, you can actually basically perform a VLOOKUP very easily by using mashup to find the row number and use the index to return the element. And you can actually change the index column input to actually get a different column and basically get whatever column you want, irrespective of the position, whether it's on the right, on the left, or it's very, very far away. Let's say your column is 692 away. You cannot count 692 one by one and then use a VLOOKUP. So in this case, you can use the index match and then use another. So in this case, maybe it's not C, maybe it's like CDE, okay, something like that. So it's very far on the right. Index match have a much easier way of monitoring that. So the difference between, of course, index match and VLOOKUP, everything needs to be on the right. Index match, it doesn't have to be, it can be on the left, or it can be very, very far away, and it's just a much cleaner and easier way to look at your code and understand which column are returning. So that's it for the third video in the Googlesheet series. I hope you enjoy index match. We will see you in the next one. And if you need more topic that you want to go for, you can actually look at the topic overview there. And we're going to talk about unique, COUNTIF, and COUNTIF-S in the next video. Bye.